to dress up on fun dress-up days and probably won a few of the contests. She has been for a very long time, a parent favorite, a student favorite, and a teacher favorite. Her absence will be felt. Everyone at Aetna and many other places wish Megan a wonderful retirement. You earned it. The board would like to thank you for your service. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you so much. That's all I need to say. I'm not getting a hug from every single person up here. Where are my flowers? Where are my flowers? You knew I'd call you out on it. Roger! Yeah. Something maybe, I don't know. Thank you. I already hugged you. Yeah, you're good. Are you sure you want to hug me? That's right. We broke your daughter's heart. Is that all right? Well, I know some good people. All right, and that was a lot of years of service. Yes. About a Garmin and Miller presentation. Yeah. That's a hard one. That's a lot to follow. No claps.
Yeah. No claps, no hugs.
Let's bang a basin.
We like this.
So, good evening. I'm Kurt South, Garmin Miller, and one of the things we want to talk about is the roof.
Oh, yes.
Just if
Microphone, please.
the mic, I was just giving those people time to get up.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Kurt South with Garmin Miller, and we're going to talk about.
It's on. It's not playing back to the room. It's just playing the recording. But if you don't use it, people can't hear you on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about brick, and I'm actually going to ask Clay with Robertson to come up and give some background and insight on the contractors and the brick and that kind of thing, and then he'll turn it back over to me.
So Garmin Miller actually put together the initial design of bricks that were presented to the committees. We've got a Glengarry brick, which is on the right-hand side, which was kind of the basis of where we started from to pick other manufacturers that could match those colors. Belden is on the left-hand side. So one of the challenges we have is the masonry contractor for the elementary school made their bid with Belden brick on the left. The masonry contractor for the high school, of course, has their bid with Glengarry on the right. We've contacted both masons for them to flip-flop, for the elementary mason to go to the Glengarry would be approximately a $5,000 upcharge. For the high school contractor to go to the Belden brick is just a little bit over $35,000. But one of the other challenges we have with switching to the Belden is that the supplier that the high school masonry contractor uses is an edge supplier. So we would lose almost 6% of edge in that contract. So
I don't understand what that is. I don't know what edge is.
EDGE is an economic diversity growth. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
In
Okay.
a state-funded project.
yes, with a state-funded project, they have a goal that is 5%,
Right.
but
Okay.
you need to meet that 5% with your contract. Now, it's not to say that we can't get edge in other places,
Uh-huh.
but that's one of the factors in changing it. What it really comes down to is to pick the brick that you like and you're gonna live with for the next 30 years. And I don't mean to minimize this, but your voters put in 600,000 to get brick. And at worst case scenario, we're talking about maybe 35,000 to get the exact colors that you want. So really it comes down to selecting the colors that you want, but we have challenges. Regardless, we want to make sure both buildings have the same colors.
Thank you. So do you understand all that? That's why I asked Clay to explain all that. So just to give you a visual, we have, on both buildings have 5 colors of brick. We have what we'll call the red, a gray, a black, and then 2 accent colors, a black and a gold. So those are the 5 colors that we're working with. And for this manufacturer, they're not going to match exactly, but that's what that sample looks like compared to the red. And you need me to hold all the other ones up?
Yeah, can you do
Okay.
it one-handed? Yeah.
I can do it one-handed and on one foot.
Okay.
So compare that to even heavier, but how those two look. So fairly close on the reds. Yes. Yes, size will be the same, and they're all this larger size.
Okay.
The smaller ones are just samples and easier to lift. So the one difference that we have is the gold. And so between those two, there is quite a bit of difference.
Can you put them together again?
Sure can. Maybe.
Yeah.
If you need to, we could take them outside in the sun.
Okay, let's do that.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Do you want to recess, or do you want to keep?
What are we doing? Going outside.
Yeah, we could recess, we probably really can't talk business, you can go out and look at it, and then come back in and talk about it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
Can I have a motion to recess, or just say recess? Okay, just say recess, don't worry.
I motion that we recess to go outside and look at the brick and the light.
Second? Second. All right.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. That passes. We are at recess at 7:42.
Those mines.
Yeah.
Are they blaming me? Are you guys spending?
Yeah, what's my, let's see. I don't like the guys at the phone.
No, hold on. They got logged out, so just a second.
She's in class. Whenever she's ready. Oh, you're staring at me. I'm thinking, okay.
I'm waiting for Rob. Are you in, Rob?
I am in.
Can you just call back?
Yeah, we'll do a roll call after that.
Yeah. We're back in order at 7:50. Mr. Jones, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Here.
Mrs. Spindler,
Here?
Mr. Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Ziny,
Here.
Mrs. Engel.
Here, we have a quorum, we can continue.
Okay, so thanks for your input outside, and I just wanted to show you two other images of the elementary, just to show you where the two blacks and yellows are. So this is the cafeteria entrance and the cafeteria outdoor dining area. And then the next slide is the bus entrance, just to give you an idea, refresh your memories of what we've talked about before. So, and then ultimately the question is, which yellows do you prefer, I'll say? If I can make the assumption that we've narrowed it down to the two gold colors, do we have a preference on which one of those?
I kind of like the not so shiny one, the duller yellow,
Okay,
but I could live with either.
okay. And kind of back to what Clay had said, if we have the flexibility of living with either, then that gives him some flexibility to negotiate with the contractors.
I would agree with John too. I could live with either. I prefer the other one, the brighter yellow,
You prefer the brighter,
but I could live with
but
either.
can live with either.
I flip-flopped actually, so.
I like the brighter.
Yeah, I think the brighter coincides with our other colors better.
And just to be clear, we're talking the brighter one is this one?
Yeah.
That's the brighter?
Yeah.
Okay. So is the general consensus that we can live with either, but we like the brighter? And
Where are
then
you at, Candy? Awful quiet.
Yeah, I am awful quiet. That's unusual. I've been waffling back and forth.
I have too.
I was liking the brighter, and then he held that up, and I'm like, well, that looks nice with that. Now I'm looking at Kathy's glass, and I like
Yeah.
the brighter with that.
That sign back there.
Yeah. And I just don't with.
But the
those
brighter
such
matches that time.
huge areas.
We have two schools.
I know.
Yeah.
My first thought is the darker color looks dated a little bit to me.
Okay.
See, I think the other one looks dated.
What?
I think the brighter one looks
do?
dated.
Do you
I
think
think
it
it looks
looks-
institutional,
I thought the other one.
like a subway.
I thought the other one did.
Do you think the brighter looks dated?
I do. That doesn't.
You know, yeah, I see. I thought the darker one had more of an orange to it.
It does. It does have a little bit more of a, but like it's one of them's like yellow gold, and the
yeah.
other one's like old gold. So
I'm like, yeah.
Been maybe around 10 times.
See, I think the one looks yellow and the other one looks gold.
what did it say again? Which one?
The one on the right is sophisticated, the one on the left is more
It's
young and
yeah,
vibrant.
yeah. Yeah, it's like that old gold versus what do your designers say? Do they have any, I mean, because you have designers that
do this? What, I mean, and those are huge areas, so what are,
Right.
do they have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I think Garmin Miller as a team can live with both.
Okay.
But I think this one is the one that matches more of the gold in the district.
Okay.
Like we said, the banners or the curtain in the front.
That was my initial reaction
Okay.
before we went outside.
I am okay with that, then, actually.
Ironically, I like the other black brick. I said I like the other black brick though.
Oh, we are not talking about the other black room.
Just yellow.
Do we need to go back outside?
No.
Do we have
Okay.
enough for a consensus, or do you think this is something you should vote on? I mean, what do you?
We're gonna need a decision by the board to help us move along, yes. A preference.
It doesn't have to be a vote, it's up to you if you want to vote, or if
We want
all of you
preference.
agree on a color, then we'll probably just shake your heads and move on.
Can I ask something? What about the maintenance of this? You've got collars out there, if it's not the sun, you will have to power wash it to get the integrity of the collar back out. Something to think about.
We've already talked about that in the planning meetings.
Those issues have all been addressed, I think, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're correct, yes.
And they're basically the same maintenance issues.
Correct.
There's neither one.
Right. Yeah, we're down to just a color
Different.
issue at this point. Yeah.
I didn't see a nod. They're gonna eventually ask me.
Somebody make a motion and let's see where it goes.
Yes.
I motion that we use the brick on the right, the duller yellow, the one that was around 5,000.
What's the brand in that one?
This is Belden. Belden.
I'll second that.
Yeah. No pressure. What gold are we gonna look
Look
at?
at this tape.
All right, any more discussion? All right, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Ziny,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
No.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes.
There we go.
Okay, we got it. You have it? You good?
Wow.
Off for a brick. Oh my God, that was 10
And we've
minutes.
had 5 meetings just about.
And then the only other thing that I have is, you may recall from a few months ago, we had the archaeological find and we have artifacts. Mr. Janelle has those in his office. We need to decide what to do with those. And we would like to have a committee of some people to work with us and Lawhon, the company that did the study for us, and determine what we're going to do with those artifacts.
Okay.
So I believe
Just like with any other group, being a special group that we didn't create in January, I would just like to see which two board members would like to come in and sit down and hear what's being said. Now, everybody can eventually hear what's being said, but we can only have two at a time. And from that, hopefully get a small number of them that we can put in shadow boxes that could go within our building, and then maybe the rest decide, to present to the full board that we're gonna donate them to SHPO, or whether we wanna maintain them ourselves, or where we wanna send them.
I'll do
So-
that. Board's okay with me being on it?
We don't have dates and times yet, it's probably gonna
No.
be,
Wow.
it could be whenever, it could be whenever they can get the
Okay.
archaeologists together.
That's right.
Fine.
Yeah.
Not trying to discourage you,
Yeah, but it's
but
summer.
it could be this summer though.
Yeah, summer I could be a little bit earlier.
yeah, I would think it would be in the summer. Not
The
in
early
May.
summer?
Not in May.
Okay,
Yeah, could do early, I think.
all right. So we have Mr. Vincent and anybody? It
I'll
doesn't-
do it.
Okay.
Put me down.
Yes.
John and I.
Over here like.
We all have two, we'll get a date.
Yeah,
and then
we'll
go.
get a date established and we'll let you know when it is. And
Thank you.
that was all that I had.
Not it.
Now, we're going, were you going to pass that on?
I will, whatever you need me to do.
We are going to discuss a little bit later. I'm going to need 2 more volunteers. We can do this now while Kurt's here, because it's part of his project. Is we're going to be moving on to the renovation ideas for Etna Elementary. And I know we've had you guys do some high school, some elementary, but this is specific to Etna Elementary. And we have a date set for next Wednesday at 3:30.
Yes, the
Would be the
22nd.
first meeting focusing solely on Etna. And if there are any board members that would like to come, obviously we can take up to 2, but we don't have to have anybody, or we can have some that want to come. So that's the first of probably a series of them over the course of the first part of the summer. First one's at 3:30 on the 22nd.
I could do that one.
I'm sorry, I didn't, okay, Kathy, I'm sorry.
I can do that.
And, okay, Candy. And while Mr. Wolf is here, the next one will be the high school renovation into a middle school. And that hasn't had a date set yet, but it's going to be coming very soon also. So,
I would like to do that one.
I'll volunteer for that one too.
so Deb and John. And that will probably be during the summer for the most part. So that will work out. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, Clay's going to give more of an update on the high school in regards to the numbers. Really, I just wanted to update you, let you know that we did drop off the plans at Lincoln County today. So they're in for plan approval, and we're anticipating 2 to 3 weeks for that process. With it being a bigger school, it could potentially go a little longer, but they typically say 2 to 3 weeks for those reviews. Once we get that information back, we'll update Mr. Janelle and Mr. Jones, and that we can forward that on to you. So at this point, we don't anticipate any issues, but we just never know. So really, other than the bidding and stuff, that's really what's going on at the high school right now. So we're just getting excited to get started. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Do we want to wait till later in the meeting? Mr. Jones?
Special meeting, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They can give us dates if they're available, but we can set the special meeting.
We're going to set a special meeting for later on for the athletic. Okay.
For early June.
Early to do that.
Yeah, it will.
We can.
Were you wanting to set that now?
We have an agenda item later.
Okay.
Is there any dates that work for you, Brian, early June?
Yeah, I'm available up through June 28th.
All right, Robertson.
All right, so we have been busy. We told you last month that we were in the middle of bidding and trying to get all of our numbers together and get both projects out. We have received projects for both bids, and just a high-level recap of where we've been and where we're going. Schematic design, we told you you had potential exposure up to 5.9 million. We worked as a team, brought it down to the design development phase of 2.9 million. And right now, with our bid day savings, we have $960,770, which is under that 2.9 million. There have been some alternates that we talked through on both the high school and the elementary school that were kind of the basic alternates, things that we pulled out that we knew we wanted. So we've already put those back in at the high school, and we're looking to put them in at the elementary. That adds up to $365,614. So right now, we're looking at current midday savings of roughly $600,000, and I'll let Julie talk more about details of those numbers, but right now we're in a positive of where we were compared to 4 months ago or 5 months ago in DD of almost $600,000. At the elementary school, we had 31 bid packages, various small pieces of the building all put together. Nothing more than just that we did have 31 packages, and that's how we broke it out. Over at the high school, we had the same amount of bid packages, and we listed some of the alternates that were also on there, but similar bid packages. And one of the things that we did through this process is I kind of pushed Garmin Miller's high school team, specifically Brian, about 2 months ahead of schedule, or a month ahead of schedule, and that was the lag between the two projects to try to get some economies of scale. And I can say that just from contractors that are now on both projects, we've got over $150,000 worth of savings that they offered to be able to do both projects instead of bidding individually. So that's good. That's what we wanted, and that was our goal in pushing that high school forward in the bid process. One of the other good things that I want to report is local participation, and I know how important that is for a district. At the elementary school, 17 of the 23 subcontractors are within a 40-mile radius of the school, and at the high school, we've got 15 out of 23. But right now, for both schools combined, we're at 70% local contractors working in this area and working on your schools. One point that I want to talk about is I said we took some basic alternates, but I also want to kind of walk through some more of the, let's just say Bob deferred to the board alternates. If you could go to the next. One of those is we had an alternate for stained concrete at the elementary and the high school. And this is a little hard to see on this drawing, but if you look at the main entry at both schools, the dark, bold, black stripes would be a different color concrete, as well as the bus drop-off area. So with that, the cost for that stained concrete was, between the two schools combined, was almost $58,500. So to point it out, you'd be looking at these stripes coming into the elementary here, and then over here at the bus drop-off. And then over at the high school, we've got it right here. So that's just what is it, about a 4-foot stripe that runs through the concrete that would be stained out a different color for aesthetics. So that's one of them that is a question of, do we want to do that or not?
And that's just for looks, there's no really purpose for that?
It's aesthetics.
100% aesthetics.
Yes, you're going to have concrete there regardless.
Okay.
It's whether it's really the cost increase and the labor increase to do the stained concrete in those specific areas. So while you're thinking about that, we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, it's like if we're having
this is some additional orchestra weights. It's the ceiling shelf handles and some counterweights and balancing. It's additional material for the orchestra. And that cost is $115,000. That kind of boosts your auditorium from functional to really highly functional, where you could kind of take the next step up in regards to presentations and what you were doing.
Yeah, if you recall, this has been sort of an ad alternate throughout the project. because we knew it was gonna come in at a high dollar amount, and we didn't wanna just put it in. Okay, we wanted to see where that was at, okay, and give you the decision, to make, okay, rather than just put it in. So, it does, it takes the orchestra, and I'm sure your orchestra, staff could probably explain it much better, than Clay and I. But it's a separate item, so you don't have to do it now, you can do it later as well. So, again, it's not sticks and bricks, that's why we made the motion. Okay?
In most of these, we truly don't probably have to have a decision made until January, but as we're writing contracts, if there are items that you know you want to do, we want to go ahead and put it into the contract. We'll go back, if there's ones that you want to wait on, we can try to negotiate with the contractor to hold his price.
And now that we know the number, we can also go back to our consultant. If you recall, we had a consultant design the auditorium, orchestra, and or the acoustics. So we can go back to them as well and see if there's a different manufacturer, et cetera, that we could potentially lower some costs as well without compromising the integrity of the bands. So.
One more thing, we're under budget for the whole area, 4.5 million we set aside for the auditorium, is that correct?
We're under budget for it?
Couple 100,000, where we at, that we're at?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, but yes, you are under budget for the auditorium, which allows you to purchase some scope items.
So we could possibly purchase this and still be under the 4.5, that was the alternate.
Okay.
So I think that was important for the
Yeah.
board to know that we are
Yeah,
under budget a
okay,
little
well,
bit.
that's
Yeah.
perfect then, thank you.
So,
Okay.
That was,
Next item.
thanks.
This is the exterior signage. This is actually right now included as part of the base bid, but with the cost, we wanted to identify it and allow the board to be able to review it. The top is the main entry. That is a 10-foot diameter aluminum painted logo that will go over the front doors. That logo, the cost for that logo is $24,000. And then the one on the bottom is right now proposed on the main gymnasium as you go by 40. That is a 20-foot diameter logo. Again, aluminum painted, and the cost of that's almost $53,000.
That's crazy. That's gonna smack people as they're driving down 40.
Stupid question, but we would be 24,000 gets us a black and white logo?
No, it's not
Okay.
black and white.
That's why I said stupid
Yeah,
question.
No, it would be colored just like the
Okay. You never know.
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but by addendum, the Indian head on the
Warrior head.
Warrior.
is not part of this project anymore. That was
Nope.
removed by addendum.
So as Clay mentioned, these are some of the higher value items that Mr. Jones and I wanted to make sure the board was aware of and would have input in. As I think, was it Deborah or Kathy that mentioned, as people drive by, they're gonna see this sign and you wanna feel comfortable. And we wanted to make sure you were part of these type of decisions.
I'm not comfortable with a $52,000 sign. Especially, because it's gonna be right there as you're driving by. The building's gonna be, how far away from the road are we gonna be?
I was gonna say 60. 60 feet.
Yeah, they're gonna definitely know what it is.
That's not a school.
And it would still have the Watkins Memorial High School
Yeah.
Right.
on it.
Right now it's proposed to be on the auxiliary gym, but if we do eliminate this logo, there's been talk, we might be able to move it over to the main gym and have it more of a feature there.
That's a lot of money for a sign.
Yeah. A lot.
Both on this.
Either one.
All right, so we will move on to the next one. This kind of came about through the elementary school, but actually our terrazzo contractor suggested at the elementary if he could make some changes to get additional terrazzo within the district.
Okay.
So we went with that theory at the high school also. And we were asked to do the auditorium corridor and the athletic corridor, what the cost would be to do that in a single color terrazzo. So you would have, in essence, terrazzo running through all of your public spaces. The auditorium area was almost 71,000, and the auxiliary gym area was 43. So that is an option. We would remove the LVT and go to a single color terrazzo.
I'd rather spend money on that. That's gonna last.
That's sign.
It lasts for a long time.
Yeah.
Our recommendation would be to do that.
Yeah.
So far, that's my favorite.
That is my favorite too.
And this would still keep, the colors aren't correct, but the pattern in the upper right-hand side is your main common space, where you'll see the different colors going through it. Those are all, each color represents a different terrazzo in that pattern. So we would keep that there and then do single color through the corridors.
Okay.
And then over at the elementary, the picture on the left is the current design with the terrazzo and the multiple colors and the patterning. This is where this idea kind of came about, is that if we simplify that pattern, which on the right-hand side is your whole first floor, is on the bottom right in blue. If we could simplify that pattern and maybe go to big space 2 colors, then we could do the rest of the student dining and the first floor main corridors for a cost of $78,000. So that would take away all the different colored patterns that we have on the left and go to a more basic, but provide you all of the first floor corridors, for the most part, in terrazzo.
Yeah, again, I'm as much terrazzo as we can get.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that.
So in the district was already thinking that way. So this one for the 78,000, I've already included that as part of those costs I showed you in the beginning.
Okay.
So I kind of had a good idea that this one would go through.
And the one at the high school, or just this one?
Not the one at the high school. The high school was kind of, I've still got to work on the numbers for the high school. I've got numbers from contractors, but they were provided today, and I've got to question some of those. So that's a tentative cost, but it would not go up from there. It would only go down from there. So the main ideas that we talked about, we've got the stained concrete, the additional orchestra, shell, and counterweights. We've got the signage and terrazzo in each building. So if there's any that we know, either a definite yes or a definite no, we can take those forward. And if there's items that we need to still think about or ponder, I can work on those contractors to try to extend that pricing.
We have a discussion about the high school GMP coming up. So we can talk more about the alternates that time, because, for example, like the orchestra rates is currently in his high school GMP number.
Yeah.
If the board didn't want it, that'd be coming out. But right now it's in there.
The extra orchestra
Yeah,
thing up
and
there.
same thing, the signs are in there now too.
Yes, so the things
So
that
if we
are-
took those things out, it would reduce the price.
Right.
And then, that could help offset the cost of the terrazzo for some of that
Right.
stuff, so.
And the elementary track.
But the stained concrete is not in there.
Is not.
So,
Are there, this may be for the other part of the discussion, you said we're under budget for the auditorium.
yes.
Were there other alternates for the auditorium that we needed to look at other than that alternate?
No.
Okay,
We were free of alternates.
we got everything else in,
We got
okay,
everything,
okay,
except for those.
except for that.
And there's some other line sets. We didn't quite go to the extent of putting in 50 line sets.
Okay,
You know,
right.
so
Yeah, right.
I think what a K-12 typically do.
Okay,
But other than that,
everything else is
yeah,
in,
you get an awesome auditorium.
okay. all right.
So when you talk about, I guess, just that auditorium space, I wanted Julie to talk a little bit that whatever money you do save in the auditorium helps to offset other costs where we might have been over.
No, I understand that, but I also wanted to make sure that since
Got-
we budgeted
Yeah.
X number of dollars for the auditorium, that we were getting everything in the auditorium that we wanted to get in the auditorium.
But one thing to keep in mind is you came in under budget overall. So
Right.
everything's a little bit less, and that auditorium is all of your money.
Right.
Right,
And as we
right.
add to it, it's gonna add to the number I'm gonna give you today.
Right.
Unless we take money out of something else. So, we do have, I have the alternate, the selected alternate list here. We did take drapery B, which was the legs, the borders, the traveler's curtains, the cyclorama curtains, right?
That's all.
And we do have at this point in time, what was the alternate called drapery C, which was that, orchestra.
Shell.
So that is in the number that I'm gonna present to you today.
Okay.
Okay.
If we decide to take it out, it comes out of their contract by change order for that amount of money.
Okay.
And all their fees.
And also look at GMP, all the alternates are listed. We point out the ones that we've selected at this point, and if you have questions about it, we can talk about them. For both buildings, so 4, 5, and the high school, if you want to take it, but they're all included in here. You can look at them if you want to as we get down.
Okay. Okay.
Are there any that we know yes or no on?
I think we can talk about it when we get to GMP, if they want to vote or they want to add it or not.
That'll work.
Is there anything you want to talk about the GMP? Are you going to be here for it, discussion? Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about the LFI and the GMP and our methods and I have the little monthly report.
Okay.
I will tell you that everybody was really busy last week, but I was on vacation. So, so I played a little catch up this week. And,
Thank you.
and so we sat down, we got a revised GMP, was that Tuesday afternoon, I think? And we sat down Wednesday and put together the numbers based on what we do at that moment. And we calculated your LFI and ROE. And that was given to you in your, I have copies, hard copies if you need it, but it was given to you as part of your Word docs. And what we came to the conclusion at the end of our exercise, that we were really close to being where you were, even with personality alternate, from being where you were at design development. So it was like $8,000. So we took $8,000 out of your contingency and moved it whole. So your LFI that you're asked to approve tonight is for $11,912,956.32, which is exactly where you were at design development. And that includes the alternates that were selected, which is the high efficiency chiller, electric hand dryers, laminate sheets work, gym divider curtains, wood flooring and auxiliary gym, 2 food service, 4 food service items.
If you want to go down and see it, go down to GMP.
Right.
Click on the GMP option.
I didn't think
And
we
then
wanted the electric hand dryers.
Yeah.
Bob didn't want them.
I don't either.
Deb don't want me to.
As long as paper towels get put in the paper towel machines, I'm okay.
But also paper towels is very expensive.
Well,
I'm talking the
That's
4,
it.
5
Putting them in
building,
machines.
right?
So if you look at 912 and 4, 5 are
Yes.
under it, click on it. that the GMP? Go down,
I'm willing to
please.
spend a little bit extra on paper towels rather than,
And then there's the alternates, 4, 5.
yes.
And so, you want to click on the alternates, did you find them?
Yeah.
Where are we?
Go down to, under 8A,
Sorry, 8A, Jerry.
GMP.
8A,
There it
sorry, I
is.
said G, that's my bad.
And then you see them down at the bottom as attachments.
Yeah.
I'll say the board does not want these alternates, we'll pull them out, anything you don't want,
But we will ask you to sign the GMP as it is tonight.
we'll do
And we
addendum.
will do it by change order.
Okay.
Because we need to get, these guys need a notice to proceed and there's some paperwork.
Right.
And after that, you're in construction. Yay. Yay.
So there's one for 912 and then one for the 4-5.
And it's the alternates, and those are the things that we're taking.
For the high school,
Yeah.
the 4-5, all the ones in priority 1 and 2 were taken, 3 were not.
As well as the fire suppression and the terrazzo.
Okay.
4, 5.
In addition, at the 4-5 building, Mr. Jones, I are recommending for some additional swings and bookshelves that when we were going through the design, the teachers were wanting. So those 2 items will be put in once we get a known number to make sure we're not over. But those were requested if we had money too, as an alternate.
And we still have your equipment, your fixed furnishings, or your unfixed furnishings to bid.
Right.
And export production.
So if you didn't see those on the list is what I'm getting at, those are still being considered.
That'll be part of the loose furnishings package.
That's what they were just, yes.
Likely.
But if they're not, we're gonna make sure that we get
Yes.
those.
So out of the alternates that that were selected, drapery B and drapery C are part of the auditorium, and they flip over to your LFI. So we listed those on your LFI and on you separately, and we are able to fund a portion of your brick cost because that's co-funded, because we are actually lower than where you were at pre-bond. I know it's a lot to take in, so if you got questions. So tonight, you'll be asked to consider alternates, sign the GMP, and approve the LFI MOU. And then the paperwork can start to allow the notice to proceed to be issued to us. And you have an exhibit in your hand.
And some of those more higher price, as mentioned earlier.
The items that we just.
We may have a little bit more time.
Okay.
But if we know, like she said tonight, that we don't want the stained concrete, then we can nix it now. That's,
Yeah, and there are some alternates that we can consider later, correct?
Well, these are really, for the most part, these are
Yeah.
remaining.
Yeah, these are all the alternates right now.
Yeah.
through the discussions with the staff and the interior, exterior design meetings, we made note of everything that we probably couldn't afford until we knew what the numbers were. And then we've made those alternates. And as these guys have been explaining, prices have been coming back very good. So we tried to return everything that was discussed. Then the higher items, we didn't feel comfortable without coming to the board.
So, the next thing that we will do is, since we have the bids and the alternate selection, or we're getting to the point where we've got the alternate selection for the elementary school, we will do a post-bid LFI MOU for the high school, or the elementary school, and hopefully return some of that over budget savings back to you with that LFI. Because it looks like we have some bid day savings that you will allow us to track district offers. That was the deal. They got your bid early, we got your money. and that's not typically how it works. Typically, it's their money. They can use it and then come back to you at certain times during construction. And then we have a quick little report saying that I was on vacation last week. So I had everybody do my work for me, so I apologize. Not quite what's happening here. It looks like we're out for permits for the high school. Are we still headed for the ODOT submission in July, Brian? Yes. We're doing programming design meetings for Aetna. We're going to start those for the existing Watkins High School. The work is underway for the site package. Looks like everything's moving pretty well. Any back soil?
No, actually, I kind of skipped the site update, but we are moving well. The elementary pad is probably within 2 or 3 good working days to be at elevation.
Okay.
And then it's going to have to sit for 30 days for monitoring for settlement, and then it'll be flipping over to the high school. If you've seen the big area, the enormous area cut and rolled out in the front corner, that's your high school building layout.
And we have the same thing for the high school. It's ready to go. The big thing tonight is that GMP. Let's see. Zoning and building permit approval has been started. We got the zoning working on the building permit. Alternate review and selection are things that we need to do to improve the GMP. I always like to talk about risk because there's always risks in construction. Always potential schedule impacts. We don't know what the weather's going to bring. We don't know what the soils are going to bring. Permitting, until that last permit is in hand, I'm always worried about what's coming back with those. I think we've got through most of the estimate, budget reconciliation, and GMP negotiation. Allowances for the later project, later packages, which is the loose furnishings, the technology equipment. There's a handful of them, and they are, I will say this again, only allowances. That's all the money that you have. So we need to be very cognizant as we go through designing those. And of course the weather, and our only action items today, the final unit. And there are 2 pictures that might fit from. But you got better.
We do.
Are we deciding these options now or later on?
I think we do it part of the GMP.
Okay.
So we can talk about what's in it currently in GMP, what's not, and then we can talk about all these, what we selected. If you want to change what we selected, we can change all that and get it all done at one time.
Okay.
So if there's any questions, don't hesitate. I'll stay here and let me know. Okay.
Mrs. Engel, I was working with Clay. We do have some footage of the site. It was taken Saturday morning after the rain. You can see looking to the west, it looks better than if it's looking to the east. And for Mrs. Moore, I put music to it.
Is it elevator music?
All right. Blame it on the rain. Yep. Is that really music?
This is your cue, Jeff. There we go. There we go. There we go. There's pictures. That's the high school.
Yep.
See the water. Lots of water out there.
Yep.
actually has dried off pretty well this week.
Yeah.
Although tonight is expected more water. There's the elementary pad about 12 o'clock. About 2 or 3 more feet, maybe 4 more feet in elevation. And just FYI, none of the soil is all good so far, as Clay would say. None of the soil is in sight. They're cleaning off the topsoil first, and then moving dirt around to get to the elevations, and then they'll move forward. But again, things have been running fairly good for a while.
Great, thanks everybody. We have a request to speak on agenda items. Becky Stackis-Smith. You will just your name and make sure the microphone's on.
There's
your name and address.
Okay.
And then you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Mr. Jones will be keeping the time. He'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
okay. I don't think I'll need the whole time.
Okay.
My name is Becky Stackis-Smith. I live in Pataskala at 1098 Oxford Drive North, Pataskala, Ohio, 43512, whatever. I don't mail myself stuff. I would like to thank the board for adding me to the agenda. So often I'm sure people stand up here and make complaints. That is not the case tonight. Tonight, it's the exact opposite. I'm here because my daughter's bus driver, her contract did not get renewed. So my daughter, Madeline, goes to Bishop Hartley, and she rides Linda Pickens' bus. And I felt compelled to come here tonight and talk to you about what an amazing job she does, because my child has been riding a bus in Southwest Licking since 5th grade. She is now a sophomore, and not once in the entire time she's been a bus rider has a bus driver called me to introduce herself at the beginning of the school year. And I remember when Linda emailed or called me, I was sitting at a soccer game and I just happened to answer the call, and she's like, "Hi, my name's Linda. I'm gonna be your daughter's bus driver." Blown away, blown away. And I'm concerned that her contract wasn't renewed in a time when here in the district we have overcrowding in the buses and we're constantly hiring bus drivers, right? Like, I have a screenshot of the job fair that you guys are hiring. What are you hiring? Bus drivers. We have a bus driver. So as I mentioned, Linda is constantly in communication with me. Hartley is interesting because she goes around and picks up every single child in the district at their house that goes to Hartley, which blew me away because I was like, I went to Catholic school in high school and we all had to ride to the high school and then get transferred to our school. She comes to our house. And so as a courtesy, I text Linda and say, "Hey, Maddie's not riding the bus today. I'm taking her to school." And she appreciates it. And she in turn texts me when Southwest Licking is closed. And so I appreciate that. So we have constant communication with her. And I think she does an amazing job. And I know that she had an accident at the beginning of the year, and I think that factored into her contract not being renewed. But as a parent, if this bus driver had an accident at the beginning of the year, that should have been addressed right then. She should have been, if you felt that strongly about it, it should have been addressed then. Like, why let her drive the entire year with kids in her bus and at the end terminate her for it, even though it was thrown out, her ticket was thrown out? So I'm concerned about that. The other big concern that I have is that I have an incoming kindergartner, okay? My little guy is barely gonna be 5.5 when he starts school in the fall. And not only is he gonna be riding the bus for the first time, he's going to have to transfer in Pataskala at the elementary school to get to Kirkersville. That scares the bejesus out of me because he is this tall. And I know Mr. Werman, I was just at kindergarten testing, and he was like, you gotta put your kid on that bus, keep to the routine. And you know what? You said that same thing to me when Maddie was in the 5th grade, and we were just moving into the district, and she knew no one, and she had never ridden the bus before. And I did it, because she was going straight to Pataskala. I'm so freaked out about him transferring and the buses losing him. I'm thinking about getting him a phone, a kindergartner, a phone, just so I can track him, or a GPS. But if I had Linda driving him around, I wouldn't be nervous because I know that she would communicate with me. She communicates with me when she's running late. She's communicated with me in the afternoon when Maddie hasn't gotten on the bus at the high school. This woman cares about her parents, cares about her kids, and in an era when, as an employer, it's impossible to find somebody who shows up and who cares about their job, it's beyond frustrating that the bus garage would let somebody like this go. So I felt compelled to come and speak on her behalf because I don't truly believe that you guys understand what an impact she has had on my family and my child. And kindergarten scares the heck out of me. Not so much the kindergarten, the busing to and from the kindergarten. And I'm sure the bus garage will hear from me if they lose my child. So I thank you for your time. I hope you reconsider the decision because in an era when you need bus drivers, she's top notch. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Teamsters Local 413. Southwest Licking Education Association. All right, we've got 4A, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Spindler?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
Yes.
Mrs. Engel?
Yes. Passes. We've got financial report, we've got report from the treasurer. Can we get a motion and we can discuss?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jones?
Attached to the board docs is the executive summary for the month ended April 30th. For the month, we did receive our final income tax settlement for the year. It did come in below estimate. Year to date, we're about 16,000 below estimate, so we're pretty close to $6.8 million, or 6.3 million. We're within 16,000, so we're pretty close. We're anticipating being but a little bit below. Everything else was fairly a normal month. That's the big thing that came in was basically income tax in the final. So other than that, there's really nothing basically that's odd from different months. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about the financial report. But year to date, we are still running about 507,000 above where we anticipate being. So we're actually doing better than we anticipated. So that's always a good thing.
Right.
Is there any specific questions I can answer for you? Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
Yes.
Mrs. Engel?
Yes. Number 6, executive session. Need a motion to adjourn into executive session for dismissal of a public employee.
The employment and dismissal.
Apologies. Employment and dismissal of public employees.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jones, call the roll.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes.
Mr. Zani.
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. We are in executive session at
item number. Back in session at 9:09. Okay, Mr. Jones, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Here.
Mrs. Spindler,
Here.
Mr. Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Zani,
Here.
Mrs. Engel.
Here, and the quorum, we can continue. Have the personnel consent calendar. Items 7A through N. One for all of those.
I would like to vote on 7K separately, 7K3 specifically. If I
Yep, okay.
make a motion for that.
So would you like to do that? How do we want to do it? So let's make a motion and get a second. You need to make a motion for that and then get a second.
Okay. Throw a motion out there for that.
I'll second that.
Discussion, all right, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. That passes. First, Mr. Jones?
No, we do A through N except for 7K3.
Motion to approve A through N, except for K3.
Need a second? Second.
But there's only one.
All right, any discussion on those?
Right. Oh, three.
Jones, call the roll.
Is that right?
Is that right? Did you write one? 7K3? Yep.
Yep, I
We're
got
voting
it.
on everything but that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. That passes. Now we have item 7K3. We need a motion to approve.
So I'll move 7K3 to approve, I guess. Is that what my motion is?
Yes.
Just 7K3 is what I'm moving. Okay.
All right, do we need a second? That would be approving the non-renewal, that is correct.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
No.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. Passes. All right, we are on number 8. Business items. We are on 8A, the GMP of the Watkins Memorial High School. I believe we have quite a few things to discuss on that, probably.
Yes.
Individually, you want to go over those, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, before we get motions. So the first thing we'll deal with the 8A is the actual GMP itself for the high school. So the actual GMP document's there. Find it, just so you see it. So basically, we're approving a GMP for $45,825,772. That does include the 2 signs that we're gonna talk about yet, the 10-foot and the 20-foot. It does already include the weights for the shell in the orchestra pit. It does not include the stamped concrete or or the terrazzo for the high school. So, so basically, we can approve the GMP, then we come back and then look at each of the individual ones they want us to vote on for or talk about for the alternates, and any of the alternates we previously selected. If the board wants to unselect those, we can talk about those same time. But let's deal with the GMP first, which is this will allow them to get moving forward on building our new high school.
I'll move that we approve the GMP.
Yeah, the gross maximum price for the new high school, yes.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani.
Yes.
Alright, that passes. I'm gonna take each item individually.
Well, I mean, so you as a board can talk about, you can decide, you can approve all alternates you want at one time if you want. You can say, it's up to you how you want to do it. There's, if you want to say, okay, we want to do the orchestra weights, we want to do the terrazzo for the high school, but then we can just say, yeah, we'll approve those. Obviously, if you don't approve it, obviously then it's not going to be an approved alternate. And I guess we can talk about those first and then go back and talk about any of the alternates we've already selected to see if you want any changes to those.
You guys wanna take those, do you wanna take those individually? So let's talk about the two signs first.
Okay.
So we've got a 10-foot sign on the entrance to the building, and we've got a 20-foot sign on the outside facing Route 40, correct?
Yes.
And one of those costs $24,000, one of those costs $53,000. $53,000. Are we wanting one of those, both of those, none of those?
So that is currently included in the GMP.
Those are currently
that the board approved, and that
Right.
they would do a deduct change order if you decided you didn't want those.
I don't know. Personally, I don't know that I could justify the cost of especially a $55,000 sign.
I'm in agreement with that. I don't know that we need the 20-foot sign on the
No, me
Route
3,
40 sign.
4, 5, whatever.
Are we still gonna have the sign at the entryway that says walk-ins? Or
Well, we had
did
to, the board said yes, but we have to actually get designed and priced out. Right now, I think it's only like 25,000, so it may not be enough to pay for that, but that's something that's not part of this GMP, but yeah, there is an allowance, is that right, Clay, 25,000?
And there's still that signage on the side of the auxiliary.
There's a budget,
gym
that's
where
what I
it
mean,
says
the budget.
Warriors or Home of the Warriors or something.
Yeah, it's not part of the GMP, but there's like a budget for it.
And there's
I'm just trying to decide whether I want a big sign that says walk-in so I can see it, or am I gonna see it as an entry sign that we had discussed earlier?
There's also signage on the side of the gymnasium on that same side that says like home of the, what is it, the Watkins Memorial?
Watkins Memorial, yeah.
That will be lit up.
That potentially can get moved to the big gym.
That could potentially get moved to the big gymnasium if we take the WM off.
I would think that would be sufficient.
Yeah,
Me.
I agree.
Right. Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
So I'm feeling consensus is we don't want the 20-foot sign. Where are we at about the 10-foot sign above the entryway? He's praying, but
I like that one personally. That's just me.
is there any way to bring the cost down any?
I kind of feel like aluminum's just gonna get pounded by hail anyway.
That's really about it.
Right now it's fabricated aluminum, so it's a lightweight material to be able to do that size of sign. We might be able to do something more towards the windows, since it is at the windows, that would be more transparent, almost like I hate to say it, but I don't know another word for it, like at Old Tangi, they did the new high school with the bear that went across the stairwell. It's actually a static, not a static thing, but like a thing that goes on the windows.
Yeah.
It could be something like that, that would, I would think, be a lot cheaper in the signage version. It just depends on what you want.
Because I always thought we were supposed to be able to see out that sign. It always seemed like that was supposed to be, go out that second floor, look out the windows, and you can see through that sign, but.
Yeah, that was when it was the Warrior logo. When we went to the WN, we made it more of a
So if we look out the window, you're gonna see the sign. You're gonna see the back of the sign.
So there'll be a window behind it?
Yeah, there's windows.
It's 10 to 15 feet long.
just also for consideration, as you'll see when you drive by a lot of schools, it's very important to make sure your main entrance is labeled. You know, you could tell somebody to go into the high school, just go right underneath the Warrior sign. And,
Or you can put letters that say main entrance.
A lot of them have a big, like a overhang, something of that nature. Again, that's why we're bringing it to you, but sometimes you want to have that special feature that draws them to the front of the building. But again, that's why it's coming to you. You can make it a cling, you can make it the metal structure. There should be some identifying mark there at the beginning.
I think I'd rather make it a cling.
I'm okay with that.
Like to the window? Yeah.
I just remember that it's tucked back underneath the overhang, so you don't see it underneath the overhang. You can see it.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
Whereas you can see,
Right,
where would
it's
be the
inside.
sign, the sign.
Up and out. Yeah, right, right.
Covered in tree area, which would be
Right.
part of it.
I would think it might be okay to maybe hold off on deciding that while you all looked at maybe some other materials, maybe? Could we do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know,
maybe, just to see financially if we could.
Right now, the
get it.
cost would stay in the GMP,
Yeah,
so
right.
we had the money
Yeah.
there for it, and if you want to do
You know
it.
what you're paying for the
Right.
aluminum side, so
Right,
you can do
to see
something
if we can
more.
just,
Right.
oh, let's see if we can just do a little better
I would
on
rather
that.
do that.
Right,
Okay.
that's right, to see if we just get it a little better price wise.
So for now, we're keeping the 10, but the
Yeah.
20 is.
The 20's going.
gone.
Yeah.
It's gone, yep, gone. You know, he's the architect, so
I
you know, you
know,
gotta.
sorry.
While you're hurting his feelings, let's go to state concrete. So where you guys at on that?
No, I don't.
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're total no on the state fund.
Unless you'd like to donate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice little plaque that said donated by.
So no on that. What about the orchestra weights? Is that the actual shell it's too, Clay? I thought you mentioned shell. That was the actual shell too. I thought the shell was originally part of it. So that's the shell in the weights. I know the band wanted the shell, would like to have the shell.
If that's the shell, I'm a yes. For that, personally.
I didn't think it was just, I didn't think it was
I'm
shell.
a yes, I don't even know what you guys are talking about, just
Yeah.
because it's gonna benefit the kids.
Yes. Thumbs up for me.
And we are actually in fact under the 4.5. I'm a yes.
So that 115,000 is already in that GMP number
Right.
you approved, so it would not go up for that.
Yep.
Right.
It'd only come down if you decide not to, I guess. I see 3 yeses, but where you two at, or?
I'm impartial.
Partial. Okay, so I guess based on my assumption, that's a yes. It stays in the GMP. So the next one is really the terrazzo for the high school and for the elementary school. You said the elementary was in your, what you show us, number selected alternates, right, Clay? The high school was 114,461 with the possibility of coming down from that. And the elementary was 78,860. I mean, where's the board on those 2 alternates?
I'm fine with that.
I think when you look long-term, Terrasa's where we need to go, so I'm good with that.
Less color, less color and more area is a better approach.
You okay, Julie? Yeah, just, she bet you're going, ooh, take a look now. She's like spending money, so. Okay, next, really what's left is the, when you approve the GMP, you also approve the GMP LFI MOU. The last 2 is looking at the alternates that we selected for the high school and for the 4-5, to see if you want any changes. I know there was discussion about the electrical, the hand dryers, that make Bob happy, but it's something that we could take out. It's like $6,000 for the 4-5 building, and I think it's like $16,000, $17,000 for the high school. So let's start with 1 first. If you go to 4-5, that's one everybody selected. So the connector
Which
road.
one is
light-
it? I'm sorry. This one?
4-5. Oh, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So the 231,000 is already selected. That's the lights and stuff for the pathway from the new site to the old site. So, so everything in priority 1 and priority 2 we selected because we were so far under budget. And 3 we did not select. So if there's any of those you have heartburn about, we went with a high efficiency chiller, but from what the understanding we got from Carter Miller, it wasn't worth going to the ultra high.
Okay.
That you wouldn't really get your money back on going that high. So that's why we wanted a higher efficient chiller, but not the ultimate. And that's the same thing we did for the high school also. So please just look through them. I guess.
Can I ask why we chose not to do the wall partition in the special ed classroom?
Well, because there's one, there's a lot of money and we can do it any time because the actual metal framework will be there.
Okay.
And we can add it at any time. And we can go ahead and do it if you want, but the framework, correct, the framework will be there to put in anytime we want to. The steel is
Okay.
there, and all we gotta do later on, if we want to do it, is purchase it. Obviously, this is gonna be cheapest now, doing it now, if you wanna do it now. But we could do it anytime afterwards.
If you have any thought, this is a great time to do it.
Well, I
It
just
does
feel like
expand
I
the
was
room.
in that meeting and that was something that the teachers expressed, like wanting, and the ability to make a smaller or a larger classroom and that flexibility going back and forth. So I actually, when we were talking about it earlier, I was thinking specifically of that item when we were talking as one of the alternates, so.
I was there too.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would have no reservations either recommending that.
Well, see if we, when we take out the,
When we take the air dryers.
Yes.
Let's put the special education wall in then.
yep.
Is that a consent for most of you?
Yeah.
So we remove electric hand dryers from both buildings.
Just gotta make sure we have an ample budget for paper towel.
Can I get a clarification though from our Garvin Miller and Clay? The electric's still gonna be run, correct? It just won't be a
I
hand
think
dryer.
Dyson ones.
So you could add hand dryers later.
Because
Yeah, the
those ones I
Dyson.
don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's what they are.
Really?
Were they the
They
Dyson
still
ones?
blow
What was
poop?
spec'd out for the electric hand dryers?
They still blow poop. And there's still poop paper towels on
Yeah,
the
there's
floor
still
that
poop,
aren't
yeah.
picked up all the time.
Yeah, that's the, you don't know which brand. I mean, I wanted something that's quiet like the Dyson that was really just took your hands in. I'm not sure if those were what was bid out or not. But we can always add those. Yeah, but they're all over the place. Even hospitals have them. So we remove both of those out and then we'll add these alternate 02.0 for the 4.5, right? Is there any other alternates in there you see?
You said twos were added,
Yeah,
priority
yes,
twos?
all
Okay,
priority
so
ones
it's
and all
just
priority
threes?
all priority threes are ones that, but if there's any other priority twos you think we added that you don't think we should, that's, you can look at and see. Is everybody good with the 4.5 where we're at?
The priority 2, the motorized overhead doors in the media center, to me, that's kind of necessary.
Yeah, it was selected.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, priority 1 and 2 were both selected.
Okay, never mind, sorry.
So only 3 was not, and we've added the wall in there and took out the electric hand dryers.
Right, okay.
I agree. I thought it was a danger having kids. It may fall on a kid or something.
Right.
So if you want to move on to the SWL 912 high school alternates. I think these were all selected, and the only option, the ones that we were kind of waiting on was the drapery C. So we go from a rubber floor to a wood floor to auxiliary gym, and we actually save money.
Wow.
We saved $12,000.
That's great.
Don't understand that one very much, but So that's pretty much all the alternates, so we select them all, except for 11.0 will come out, which is a stained concrete site package that will not be selected. Everything else will be selected.
That's great.
And the 20-foot sign.
The sign's coming out and the hand dryer's coming out, so.
It's pretty. Pretty doesn't educate.
Actually, 2 hand dryers will pay for the wall.
And it will,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, pay for the sign. So, I mean, I think Clay, do you have your marching orders? Julie, you're going
right.
to change, so, I mean, there's no other alternates. The building should be going, then be a go.
But we are, again, like with the loose furnishing and some of the others that have allowances, there may have to be some additional alternates above the allowances that will come back and say, hey, we want more swings, we may want more, or this or that.
Yeah.
And we know that some of the staff would like additional things.
So I think that's everything related to GMP and all alternates for both buildings, so it should be good. So that's everything for that one. I mean, the next one will be special meeting, if you want to set up while they're here real quick.
Sure. We need a motion to set a special board meeting in June to discuss the athletic facility needs.
I make a motion that we do that.
We need a date.
Date, time, place.
Not this for discussion. I've been here a long time.
Am I allowed to add something?
Yeah.
Could we also consider that if we have any additional hirings coming on, that we
can add
maybe
those as well.
just do it real quick first? Yeah, I'm not saying there is, but sometimes people have to get out of contracts prior to, from another school district. We'll still have June, we'll try not to bother it, but just in case we have a
That's
unique
why we can add
situation.
that. So, new hires.
Personnel consent calendar, it'll be a personnel consent
Yeah,
calendar.
and hopefully we won't have to do it, we don't want to waste any
Okay,
time,
that's fine.
but just in case.
That's great. So, what,
Special meeting for personnel consent and
athletic facility needs?
Better not be on my birthday.
So
What about June 12th?
That's what I was gonna
I
say.
mean, Garmin Miller will be here down there anyway for our core
Oh,
team
there you go.
meeting.
Okay.
They won't need to make a special trip. And we got core team and construction site meeting both that day, so if they're already down here, it'd save them driving 2 hours. If that works for any of you, I mean, everybody.
Kathy?
I'm looking. Sorry. I didn't mean to say it like that.
I will not be here. I'll be in Michigan from the 2nd through the 16th.
I can't. I can be here. Yeah. Wednesdays in general aren't great, but
After, is it all right if we go ahead and?
Yes, no, I have no
Since
problem
we're
with
trying
that.
to get it in
I'm
early
just-
in the month.
I'm just saying that it's my wife's dad's memorial service that week, and so we'll be up there. So make it whatever works for the rest of you.
Okay.
Sure. And then the rest of the month I may be out flying, so it
Okay,
really
all right.
academic, whatever works best for you guys.
Does that work?
Yes.
The 12th?
what time?
Yeah, do it 6:30?
It's
Well, I
up,
guess,
I don't think
it's up to you as the board to decide, so.
Like 6 o'clock would be the, is that up? 6 o'clock?
I would say it'd probably be a 30 to 45 minute meeting.
6 is fine with me.
The regular board meeting starts at 7, so.
Yeah, we won't have a regular
Oh, yeah,
meeting.
okay, so that's
Yeah.
not over. Oh, yeah, so
We won't be
whatever.
athletic.
You guys
Okay.
want to have it.
Actually, it's a regular meeting on my birthday.
Yeah, so,
6 o'clock? That's fine.
yeah, so.
But I'm gonna disagree with Brian, I don't think we can hold a 30 or 45-minute meeting. We'll have athletic there and there'll be a lot of ideas, so I'm looking at it being longer than that. Just, if anybody had a conflict like at 7 or 8 o'clock, it may carry a little later than that.
So 6 o'clock.
So it'll be a special board meeting for personnel
Yep.
and discussion on athletic facilities, 6 o'clock PM in the board meeting room.
Yep.
We have it, and John's already moved it.
We need a second?
Yes.
now.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, Ms. Jones, call the roll, please.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes, that motion passes. All right, we have items 8C, the discussion on the use of facility fees.
You guys are good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Have a safe trip back. Is Kurt driving so you can stay? Enjoy your milkshake at McDonald's.
Me?
All right, we have our use of facilities form in or online in front of you. We have, this was put together by a combination of our building and grounds and policy committee.
Correct.
We had some discussion on it, and then we had basically grandfathered the existing groups that had not been paying to continue not paying until the end of this school year.
I believe we actually labeled column 2 as all free.
Correct.
And yeah, so the end of the school year is, we've taken at the end of June.
June.
Right. So I guess the question tonight is, do you want to continue that? Do you want to modify anything? Because starting July 1st, this would go into effect with the rates that are listed there. So obviously we talked about wanting to rediscuss it. And that's what we need to do.
And is it, are we just opening up for discussion?
Yep.
I do recall when we did vote on this, but that I thought and I've tried to go back to the video, but this is like the 1 month or one of the 2 months that we didn't get our video. But I thought that we did the grandfathering, and then Bob made a comment that beyond that date, we would give him the superintendent's discretion to still allow some of these events that have always happened to keep happening. And I thought that was what I had
That is
recollected
true.
from that comment, that even beyond the July or the June 30th date, that you would still be, knowing our wishes on certain things, you would continue to offer the, moving forward.
And as I mentioned, like the Special Olympics is always asked,
Yes.
those type of, I plan to, but, there's not a lot, but we've had a few in the past, but it'd be nicer to have a known groups.
Right.
So that I'm not, some people may say I'm picking on this group or that group, so it'd be better, but I will do my best to make
Well, I just
everybody
wanted to
happy.
make sure that was still what I was thinking the right way.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know.
So what I look at is if they're in column 2, 3, or 4, if they come and they have a special reason, special cause, it might be a funeral, it might be something that we don't have down, I would grant them a free use. This past weekend, we had an example, we used the facilities for something like that. So definitely we'd want to work with our community that way too.
And I do recall, John, at least in the building and grounds, I think John was in there, and we did discuss how not student organizations, but the organizations within the schools that benefited our students, the PTOs, the athletic association, the band boosters, and those types of organizations should, at least in developing it, I was under the impression we made a comment that we would like to see those current activities still continue on as they are with the rates that they're currently paying, which could be from 0 to paying the dietitian or
Right.
whatever they're
I would
used
say
to.
I've had some conversations this week with people from some of those different groups. And to me, the dividing line seems to be paying for the facility usage, not the labor.
Correct.
So specifically, like the music boosters and the PTO, if it's a weekday, it's not going to cost them anything anyway. But if it's the weekend, like the craft show or PTO carnival or whatever, then they're going to have to pay to use the facility and for the custodian food service and whatnot. So I guess the direction I would personally like to see would be, maybe not necessarily move them to group 1, but keep them in group 2, but not have them pay for the facilities, but for the custodial staff. And, you know, they all seem willing to pay, and they're kind of surprised that they hadn't already been paying for the custodial staff.
So are you suggesting the items below the black line? For example, the custodian,
Yes.
food service, PA, stadium lights, stadium
Yes.
scoreboard, those, okay.
That's exactly the feedback that I've been hearing as well. That is where the sticking point is with
And
everyone.
Again,
Is-
I've also heard, sorry, I didn't.
It's not the custodian charge or the cook charge that is getting the negative feedback. It is the facility charge, the hourly charge for the cafeteria, the hourly charge for the kitchen, the hourly charge for the auditorium, for the groups that are benefiting our kids. That's where the problem is coming in. And my personal thought is almost to take these columns and shift them all kind of to the left or to the right. So basically, group 1 and group 2 are no charge above the black line. Does that make sense? So that there isn't a charge for the facilities for those two groups. That's what I would propose.
Candy, are you also suggesting in that same train of thought to move 3 and 4 over to one level?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
I would suggest that, but that's just my personal opinion. Just by the sheer nature of some of the 501c3, just by the sheer level of dollar amounts that people have come back and said, you're charging me $4,000 for X, Y, and Z. But I
think shifting that would cover that, but group 4, they're out of district people. I think if that's the market rate, they should pay that.
Yeah.
Because they
So
are
just
our,
shifting group 3. Yeah,
So just
I could
shifting
get
group
behind
3 over 1 and whatever, something, but
Are you talking about just above the line?
just above the line, absolutely.
We still want to lose too much money on custodians.
The dollar amounts below the
Same
line
as
are the,
these.
Yeah, that's what I see exactly.
the dollar amounts below the line are the fixed costs for those items. I mean, I think people need to be paying for the labor and the electricity to use those actual costs, 100%.
But we gotta think like $10 is, we pay a custodian, it's probably $30 an hour.
I understand that,
So
so
that's-
it's not
I mean,
even covering that, I
Yeah,
get that.
so that's why I make sure that if we want to up that, or are you okay, leave it 10, 20?
I am totally okay with leaving
Okay,
those things
that's
the way
fine,
they
so
are.
yes, that's good.
I understand that's probably not covering those things, but they are at least trying to help offset some of those costs for us. And I think everyone should contribute as far as if there's gonna be a cook there, they need to pay for, which there has to be, they need to pay for it. If there's gonna be a custodian there, they need to pay for the custodian, for everybody. But just the items above the dark line, I think need to be adjusted, so.
This is a regulation to a board policy, so
Yeah.
there wouldn't need to be a first reading to change
To
it.
change it.
And you could do that tonight if your board wanted to with and we can bring a document back to you next month that says basically groups 1 and 2 would be no charge, and group 3 would be whatever the rates are for group 2 is what I'm hearing for above the line, and group 4 remains the same.
Yeah.
If that's what you as a board want to do, then you can always do a
we
first
need a
reading.
first and a second reading, right?
Yeah, first reading could be, then if there's no major changes, based on what we talked about, that's what would come in the
The
document back.
second reading is when it would be approved.
Yes, it'd be an
Could
effective.
we add the first reading to our special meeting, and then a week later, have the second reading at the regular meeting?
As far as I know, yeah, as long as it's 2 separate meetings, it should be
So I think
good.
that'd probably be good, so we can
'Cause
actually
even-
see
Give us
it.
time.
Because even the first meeting, you can approve it, you can temporarily approve the policy to be in place until it's formally approved on second. So there's options to make sure the policy's in place before July 1st, and that's what the
Right.
board wants, so.
So do we need a motion to add that to the special meeting then, or? can that-
Yeah, we need, support that to, or at least a friendly amendment that you want to also add board policy to
Yeah, go
the,
ahead.
is everybody okay with that?
So but are we bringing this back to the policy committee to like readjust, or are we making those changes right now?
I think it's in the
And this
board's
is the
hands.
first reading, or is the first reading special?
First reading is gonna be at the special meeting.
So.
So based on your
who's
comment, we'll make the changes to the form.
Okay.
Bring the form
That's what I
back
was
to
thinking.
you for
Thank you.
first reading at the special meeting on June 12th.
Gotcha,
And
thank
we'll be
you.
able to see a draft of that before the meeting, so.
Yes.
Okay.
So the only changes are gonna be just, like you said, group one, well, that would be the same wording, group two, above the line. Group three would be the same numbers that's in group two right now, and four remain unchanged, above the line.
Candy, did you say that you thought though group one should also pay for custodial?
That's a good question. I was just thinking.
And everything else under that group two is paying for right now currently?
No, I said everything under the line should remain the way it is
Okay.
now, is what I said.
Yeah, she did say that.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The, we're affecting the columns. Is there any groups in any of those columns that you see need to be moved or adjusted or terms added?
Personally, I would also like to give the superintendent the permission to use his or her discretion in waiving the fees as he or she sees fit.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you waive the fees, in the past for Special Olympics, I think that is entirely acceptable to continue to do so. Or if you've waived the fees for a funeral, I think that's entirely acceptable that you would continue to do that. That's how I personally feel.
Yeah, I was just making sure that there wasn't another group that you wanted to slide from like column 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 or the other way. So if you're fine with those headings, then that's what we'll go by. Okay.
I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
You guys fine with the headings the way they're at?
I am.
I actually have a question. I'm sorry.
No.
So we're okay with everything below the line. However, if our athletic association or band boosters hosts a competition, they can't use our scoreboard without paying the $30 fee. Are we okay with that?
I think
Or turn the lights on?
I mean, there's a cost to that. I think we have,
Even though the funds that they're raising go to the students. I'm just throwing it out there
I
to
know.
be talked about because
Is there any, I thought most of the competitions were ran by the band themselves, which would be covered under the school, which would be free.
yeah, but the
Does the
band
actual
boosters are
run
the
some?
ones that raise the money to go towards to raising money for the band.
I know, but I mean the actual competition, like I said, would it be actually a booster support?
Right.
A booster competition or a band competition?
It's a band competition that is hosted by the Band Booster Organization, as far as I know.
Yeah, I thought we discussed this and it was, most of that was like school band, so.
I'm just
But that's, I mean, it's a
double
good question.
checking.
Good question.
I mean, that was just one of those questions. Or, the PA system in the high school when they want to announce, drawings at the craft fair, you could read that the athletic association would have to pay $30 an hour to use the PA system in the gym to announce, raffle drawings at the craft fair. I mean, that's just.
which I do at the craft fair.
So I don't know if we want to make, I don't know.
I think I think it's all great topics, but I think you have to remember that a lot of times things get broken. And, you might have a musical coming up and the sound system doesn't work. I think when we were discussing it as a group in those committees, we wanted to make sure that we had a procedure in place, a policy in place that would maintain what we have.
But can that be, not to be argumentative, but could that be achieved without like a upfront charge? Like there's some sort of signing off saying, if you break it, you are replacing it, or, you know.
Well, I think like with the PA system, it was per se for the auditorium and the new and the old, because we've had that equipment broken, we've had things spoiled, we've had gadgets moved all around, so the next person comes in, can't figure it out. So we have hired a, what do we call that person? Auditorium manager, just like a kitchen person coming in, you know, we don't want them to come in and fire up the grills and things of that nature. But again, the board can discuss and take it out. I'm not being argumentative, but when we discussed it in those groups, that's where the discussion was focused on, is trying to maintain the equipment in a.
And what I'm saying now is not in, against those discussions, except with the exception of the people we just pulled into Group A, that are raising money and funds that directly affect the curricular and co-curricular activities of our students.
I mean,
That's the tough balancing act.
it is, and I think at some point, I mean, I keep going back to, we're still losing money. We're not gonna be making any money. We're still losing money. And I think we're in a situation where, you know, we've got a later discussion about future levy. We've already taken away breakfast. I just think I think at some point we have to say, these things do cost, and we will help you as much as we can in what we're doing right now, but we do have to cover some of these costs. That's just where I am.
Well, could that go under your discretion? You were saying the PA system at the craft show, or whatever. Right?
I was just throwing out examples. That's all.
Is the PA system just the telephone at the building? Is that what the PA system is?
I think the
PA
system,
like at the high school, the telephone?
In the gym, the high school has a separate PA system that's just in the gym. There's a microphone they can use for that system.
And there's one at the stadium, and that line item could mean any of those things.
Right.
So it's not really defined as to what that goes with.
Yeah, I don't think we need to charge $30 an hour if we're using a phone.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That's the only thing they use for the craft show is that they pick up the phone and they announce into that. I'm like, we're not charging $30 an hour for that, right?
we're not charging anything right now.
No,
We're trying
I
to
know.
establish it. No, I don't mean
it.
it
You know what I'm
negative.
saying? No, we're not.
I
see what
think the
Doug's
concern is the auditoriums.
absolutely, and there was going to be some super expensive equipment in the auditoriums. And I think we need to keep a handle on that super expensive equipment in those new auditoriums.
Can we add a line item? New auditorium.
That's right.
Yeah.
Equipment fee.
Exactly. Or I'm not sure that with the new auditorium, we're not going to have to make up a brand new form.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be allowed to, I mean, seriously, you're going to have to work it through whoever is in charge of the new auditorium. We're not going to let just anybody walk in and say, I'm going to use your equipment in your new auditorium.
And that's another question I would have, if this is truly for, you know, the new auditorium and we have an auditorium manager, is this money essentially, you know, he's going to be running the show, he or she, for whoever is renting this out. So is that covering his wage, or, you know, because he's the guy in charge, or she?
It's a great point, because the idea in the group again was that we would bring this person in. If it's a school event, then the school is paying for it, but if it's an outside event, the gentleman would come in just like in the kitchen, and it may not cover his entire cost, but it helps compensate for that, and they can use the.
And
so it's good to have.
Yeah. So in that, you know, light, again, it just goes back to, you know, Candy and picking up the phone and saying,
right, hey,
you won the basket.
That's right.
And that costs $30.
I don't think
that's crazy.
I don't think I'm worth $30.
And tying into what Deb just said, you know, we still are putting in some cost. And $10 an hour is pretty cheap for that group. I would be open to moving that cost up a little bit. I don't know if that would make much of a difference to the bottom line.
Is it? Sorry, I threw a wrench in everything.
You can take this in steps. You can make all the changes to the fee structure now, and at the first reading, take a look at it and see what you've liked and what you don't like, and tweak it that evening, I guess.
Yeah, because first reading, you tweak it some more,
Right.
and then.
I like that idea.
Okay, me too.
So should we summarize what we want to do now so that we're all on the same page? Right?
Well, the note I wrote was, change group 1 and 2 to no charge for facility use. Group 3 changes to group 2 rates above black line, superintendent discretion to waive fees is what I kind of talked about.
Group 4 stays the same.
Group 4 unchanged.
That's great.
Now, do we need a motion to add this to?
No, I think if everybody's okay.
I've got another thing. I'm so sorry. We have, and I'm just double checking, we may already have this in the policy. Do we have provisions in there that say any of these organizations, they have to be utilizing this for their organization? They can't, as a member of the organization, come and request this for somebody else, like, and sign
I
off
see what
of
you mean.
it?
Yeah. I don't think.
Like a friend
Oh, I think that's
or-
how we started with this whole discussion.
Right. Are we still doing that, or?
No, I don't think that's happening anymore. They sign off for the
Yeah.
No.
basketball,
Right.
youth basketball. That doesn't happen anymore now.
Yeah, right.
That's correct, Pam?
And the column names and everything listed in each group should stay the same? Okay.
I say that Bob said you can always tweak it again at the first reading. So.
All right, good.
Good.
We have proposed elementary handbook changes.
There's 3 handbooks that were there, so you can do one or all 3 if you want. It's up to you.
Did everybody get a chance to look at those earlier?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments?
Yes.
I do too, so do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
I was looking at consistency, and I was looking at the elementary handbook and then the middle school and the high school handbook, and specifically what caught my attention was with the elementary handbook, they still alluded to out-of-school suspension and in-school suspension. And the middle school handbook, let me get my notes out. The middle school handbook, no, I can't find it. Oh, here we go, on the second page. Definition of discipline consequences. We're going to in-school study instead of in-school suspension. The reason given, more appropriate description. Then the high school one, now the elementary one still said in-school suspension. It didn't have this new terminology. The high school one changed in-school suspension to in-school study. They also said for their reason was clarity. Middle school was more appropriate description. And then I did have a question for the high school, page 33, the disciplinary measures. It said add school-based stay away agreement. What is that?
I mean, at times kids will have a conflict.
No.
No, actually, yeah, you can go ahead and define it, but Kathy had actually brought this up and wanted to make sure we had it in the handbook.
Okay.
So Mike can describe it.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a conflict between 2 students, I mean, it doesn't really have any legal ramifications. We'd like them to stay, just to avoid contact and things like that, so we put it in writing that they agree to stay away from one another to avoid any further conflict or confrontation.
Okay, so that does not refer to OSS.
No.
Okay, because never mind, doesn't matter what I did. That doesn't refer to OSS. Okay, so going back to my original concern, I don't like the term in-school study. To me, we're changing the name of in-school suspension. Everybody knows what that is. The elementary school still has that in their handbook. That, to me, is putting lipstick on a pig. It sounds like we're watering down discipline. I don't like that. That's just where I am. That one caught me today, and it's been eating at me. So.
And don't we have stay away agreements across the board? So why isn't it in everything?
Is it,
We didn't define it as discipline, so.
Under contract.
What?
Student contracts. It's just worded differently depending on the grade level.
but it's in the handbook that we utilize them? In all the, is it in the middle school too?
It's under student contracts. Okay.
And that's what they're called, and that's what,
And it's not always a discipline problem.
I understand
Right.
that.
Yeah, use it for.
Just don't touch each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Touching.
All right, so do we want to talk about, are we gonna get so was the in-school study, is that like kind of on the state level where we don't wanna call it a discipline, just an idea?
Okay,
Okay,
because
so
the
do we
reasoning
wanna
said best practice, and that, I was just curious.
Or was that kind of that positive discipline,
Correct.
social
Yeah, the whole idea is
injustice?
like, again, it's a disciplinary measure that we use for kids. I mean, could it be viewed as a suspension? But again, you're still making up work. You still have, we still give back. Actually, a lot of times we treat a lot of kids that are in ISS on an individual basis. Many times if they have to go out for tests or if they have to do a project, we'll let teachers go out. So there's a lot of flexibility. So, I mean, is it truly suspension? Like you said, I mean, you can call it what you want, but we remove them from from the social environment, but we try to provide them as much of the academic needs that we can in that environment. I mean, we can.
It's what you described, it sounds like, but it's a new term.
Yeah, I don't, and that, I just don't like the new term.
So, following up
But
on
it is
what,
positive.
are you
It's
done,
not,
Mike?
it's not totally positive, because we're saying it's the definition of discipline consequences. So we're saying,
Right.
here's the negative, but here's the we're gonna say it's really positive. We're gonna treat you negative, but we're gonna say it's positive.
And that, this changes at the middle school and the high school, this verbic, semantics change, or whatever we're calling it?
The elementary still says.
Okay,
Right.
so, what, can you repeat what you just said, is it still count as like a district suspension?
No, if you're in school, it doesn't count as a suspension.
It doesn't now, anyway?
Just like a long detention.
It's even,
Yeah, school suspensions are what.
But it's still tracked in the computer, they had ISS.
Yes, it is.
okay.
It's tracked as a disciplinary action.
Is it ever used like to determine whether a kid may or may not get to go on like at the 8th grade trip or something like that? Or is that only the out of schools?
It would be the entire discipline, but that would be after school detention in schools.
Okay.
And out of schools. That would be-
It all gets taken into account, okay.
All right.
I have another question. Were you done with your questions?
Yeah. Sorry.
Did they all get answered? Cell phone policy at the middle school. I'm kind of excited about this. So, like, how is it going to work? Is it going to be like dress code? Is the first period teacher going to, I mean, is it once they get caught with a phone, is that when the discipline happens? I mean,
How's it really gonna work? That's what we wanna know.
I'm just fearful that it's just words on paper, that's all.
I want it to work wonderfully. I mean, the expectation will be exactly what it says. It's to be turned off as soon as the day starts. It shouldn't be visible after that. And with the board's support, first offense, parents will have to pick it up. I hope that everyone will get the message quickly that not gonna have their cell phones. Cell phones in the middle school become a problem.
Yeah.
And any other school.
There's other schools in the county that are doing this.
No, that's, yeah, I'm
supportive.
Absolutely.
So I think they, yeah.
Quick question, just because I know this is an issue for my high schooler who needs a specific calculator for math that the upper math classes have enough of. So she has to download an app in her phone. Do we have any classes at the middle school that would have to have a specific thing that they utilize? And if so, do we need to look into providing more of whatever that specific thing is?
Have you been talking to my math teacher?
No, I just know that that's the only reason that my high schooler keeps her well, I'm sure it's not the only, but I know that she has to have that for her Algebra 2 class or whatever she.
I believe we have one set of that type of calculator. I should probably buy at least one more set. We only truly have 2 teachers that are teaching quote unquote that level of math, but
okay.
I should probably
So we'll get calculators.
Consider a class set of the graphic calculator.
Awesome.
Coming your way, Rick.
I was just thinking that.
Sorry, I just know that that's
just
the
thinking that.
excuse I hear a lot. Okay, my questions are over.
Okay, I've got one. This is shorts and skirts for the young ladies in the middle school versus the high school handbook. The fingertip length at the middle school versus the whatever it says at the high school, which is it must be not to detract in your education. I personally have a much better, I think it just works better at the high school because I think that 4-inch thing, I think you run into, I actually have pictures on my phone of 2 young ladies that have 2 very respectable, these are not my daughters, FYI, that were sent to me of 2 pair of shorts that are both very respectable, and one of them got sent home for discipline, and one of them didn't, and this one's shorts, and neither of them have their fingertips touching the bottom of their shorts, and one of them got sent home for discipline, and the other one did not. I just think that it's always a problem for girls in this day and age when you make that particular designation. I think they can be respectable length without being that particular length. That's just my personal opinion.
And are you talking at the high school or the middle school?
I'm talking at the middle school. I think you can use the wording in the high school's manual for the middle school dress code. That's my opinion.
For all of it or just that?
Just for that.
Okay.
Just for that. Just for the shorts and skirt length. Yeah. So I would like to see that changed to reflect that. I believe the high school, I don't have it pulled up, right? I can get it. But I believe that the high school manual says something about it must not affect the educational process or something, which basically leaves the discretion.
And that becomes its own situational issue because one teacher thinks one thing and another teacher thinks another, and they make it all the way through the day to 7th period, and that teacher has the problem.
Well, I do understand that, but at least, I mean, I know that's.
I know.
But it's still.
But that's not a handbook thing.
No. So I would like to see the wording at least a little bit. So, I don't know.
So we're voting to.
I don't know what we're doing. Those are just my thoughts right now. I think we've all just had thoughts. So
right.
You can do with it what you will. So.
Well, we had to get on our knees.
I know.
Catholic school, get on your knees.
Yes,
Touching.
we're all the same way.
This plaza, you're not touching.
When we vote, are we voting to approve as printed?
Yes.
Or you can vote as with an amendment. That's up to you. So we don't have a motion either way yet, but you can obviously vote to amend the middle school if you want to.
The
and see if
recommendation
the full
is as printed. So you would have to change it based on your discussion tonight and then vote on it.
What was the only change? Just the
was there a
in-school?
change?
Well, John doesn't.
It would be a motion to approve and then we'd have to have an amendment.
Or you can just do a first amendment, motion to change it, and if it gets approved, then you approve the amended handbook.
Okay.
That's just one way of doing it. Or you can do it your way too, however you want to do it. Either way is fine.
Okay. We'll see where it goes. I'll make a motion that we get rid of the terminology in middle and high school of in-school study, and keep it in-school suspension.
We have a second. I'll second that. Okay, do we have any more discussion?
So you want to change from in-school study to in-school suspension?
Yes. That's what it is now.
Okay, any discussion?
Is it? No, I answered it. Never mind.
Okay, let's vote.
This is a vote to amend the high school handbook.
And the middle school.
And middle school, high school and middle school.
They both had that terminology.
And high school handbook, okay. Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
No.
Mrs. Moore,
No.
Mrs. Spindler,
No.
Mr. Zani.
No.
Okay, so we're leaving that the way it is.
Okay.
All right, how about,
I'll make.
you got one?
I can just make a motion if we're ready. I move to approve items 8. Sorry. D,
E, F.
New glasses and I'm still doing this. D, E, and F.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
No.
Mr. Zani,
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. All right, that passes.
Look what we get next, an easy discussion. We'll find it.
All right, so now we've got a discussion regarding the renewal of the emergency operating levy.
Who's gonna lead that? Just kidding.
How about you?
Okay, all right. We've talked about this before, so our emergency operating levy is $4.525 million. It basically ends December 31st, 2019, but we collect through 2020. So as long as we renew it in 2020, we won't lose any money. So we need to renew the levy by 12/31/2020 or by the November 2020 election. So we have two options. One would be just a straight renewal. We can just do everything the same. Emergency operating, 4.25, 5 years. Or you can change the years. Anywhere from 1 to 10, 1 to 5 or 10. So you can go up to 10 years for emergency if you want to. So that's one option. Or you can change the dollar amount. I mean, you can change the dollar amount or the years of the levy. It's up to you. We just can't change the name of the levy, because if we change it from emergency to something else, we lose the state share of homestead rollback, which is 12.5%. So we actually have to, we would collect more taxes from our local taxpayers to give us the same amount of money. So it doesn't make sense. The second option would be a substitute emergency operating levy. And really the difference here is, one, it can be for a continuing period of time. It doesn't have to be for up to a max of 10 years. It could be continuing. Is the first benefit. The second benefit, it allows for growth for new construction only. So as we are a growing school district where a lot of new homes are being built, we will receive additional money above the 4.25 for the new homes being built, or if you're building addition on your house or something like that, just the addition part. You would not see an increase in your taxes for a normal homeowner with the same, it would be the same they're paying now. It's really for people moving in, paying the same amount of tax as you are versus them paying less is really the big difference. So, but the really big difference is also continuing and allows for growth. The two differences is the difference between the two types of levy. You cannot increase your emergency operating and try to make it a substitute. If it's an increase, it's an increase. It's still going to be emergency. It only can be a substitute if you go with a straight renewal, except for the years. So obviously, we talked about at the previous meeting about being on the ballot in November 2019. So it needs to be filed by like the beginning of August. So we need to do the first reading in June, the second reading in July, so I can have it filed by the deadline, which is the beginning of August. So I really, I'm asking the board to do is to decide what kind of levy, how much, how long, so that I can have our attorneys, Becky Princehorn, draft up the resolution language to have it ready for the June regular board meeting, the first resolution. Is there any questions, anything you need to answer? So the two option, regular, substitute. Obviously, if it's substitute, it's got to stay at 4.25. How long? 1 to 10 or continuing?
For the substitute of 5 to.
Continuing. 1 to 10 or continuing? I mean, it comes down, we're always going to need this emergency levy.
Right.
There's the benefits that Bob said, there's the benefits of the community can say they're holding us accountable if you're not doing things right, that we can not pass it in 5 years. But also levy fatigue, you worry about levy fatigue. One thing we'll get to the 5-year forecast is we are going negative spending. And that's starting 2023, we're going to be spending, even if we renew our levy, we're going to be spending more than we're getting. But when we passed our building levy, we said we would come back with a straight renewal with our emergency operating. We wouldn't ask for more money because we're building new buildings. And those new buildings is right now there's an estimate included in the 5-year forecast for opening these buildings. So, but we do have to be careful with negotiations. We have to be careful with hiring for future years. In addition to with state funding being flatlined, that's going to have a bigger effect for us. So I guess that's the first discussion one is, do we leave it at 4.525 or do you go for some kind of increase? You renew it and then in a couple of years you try to do a 1 or 2 mil additional. It's up to you. So if we leave it unchanged, then we have the option for substitute or emergency. If we want to change it, it can only be an emergency.
Throw a curveball.
You're good at that, yeah.
Just talk to Mrs. Engel. On your tables is the attendance information, but there's also a graph, and Rick brought up voter fatigue. The first couple pages, the first graph is Columbus Business First. The second one, which recently came out, put us third in the central area. The second one is the monthly presentations that I give you. My percentage increase is lower than what they have. But where I'm going with this, if you look at the last two graphs, the blue line is representing our enrollment based on the Columbus First projection and also mine on the second graph. But the yellow is the high school facilities. That's what we're building our buildings for. So you can see that our enrollment, if it continues at the rate that I've been sharing with you, and what Columbus First says, is that it's potential that you're going to have to go out and build new elementaries. So Rick brought up a great point about voter fatigue. So when you're looking at this, maybe it is something with maybe a 10-year length of time instead of a 5-year, so that you're not going back the same time you might have to be going back for a building. Not that you will, it kind of looks that way. There may be other options, TANs, whatever it might be, to build an elementary. But I just wanted to make sure you understood the enrollment, and that also has to be a factor when you come to going out to the voters.
Yeah, one more point is, I'll just say it, the best option to get approved the first time in November is a straight renewal for 5 years. That is the best option to get approved in November. We've always had very good luck with renewal levies. I still think, we've done substitute one at a time, and I think there was confusion about, was this a construction or was this a building, or was it, we still need to educate about what a substitute levy is and how Licking Heights just approved theirs.
Right.
But if you want to pure, the best chance we got to prove first time is a straight renewal for 5 years. That's the best chances. I think a substitute has a good chance. It's going to be education. But that's something, just want to make sure you're aware of that too.
And the substitute, while we can't change the
5.25 million, yes.
it grows with anyone that moves in.
If they be out there, any new construction, anytime a new house is built, new building's built, it will grow. So it will allow growth, which will help some with.
And it can be continuing.
And it can be continuing.
And there's a lot of growth scheduled in our area.
Well.
And we got,
I mean, in terms of housing, there's a lot scheduled to be built.
So financially, it may not be the best thing the easiest thing to pass, but financially, the best thing would be a continuing substitute.
If I had my recommendation, ideal, continuing substitute, permanent, continuing.
Yeah.
Continuing substitute would be what I would like.
That's the pipe dream.
That's the pipe, that's the best case scenario for school district. We get it approved, we're always going to need it. We don't need to worry about that anymore. And it grows with new construction. That is to me, that's the ideal option for the
And
board.
current residences will not see an increase
No,
with that.
not unless
at
they
all.
build an addition on their
Right,
house or
right.
something like that. But yes, the current residents will not. And they will still see a reduction in rate, but do reevaluation every 3 years, 6 years, the revalue training will update. If the value of the district goes up, it will go down like it always has. So I think we can educate the community on what it is.
Yeah.
But the key is it's no new taxes for our existing community members.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
And that fits to the commitment that was made prior to us newbies being on the board. So.
Candy, do you mind if I release some of the principles?
Do you
I
need
mean, there's a few questions later, but I think I can handle.
No, I don't need a motion if we got consensus. If it's a little bit.
Some of them have to get up at 6 o'clock.
Wait a minute, can we vote on
But
this?
if I got consensus.
No, absolutely. No, please
Yeah.
feel free. Please feel free.
But before you make it home, bring us food.
But somebody.
I ate it, I just lived it.
Somebody could go get.
No.
I kind of do.
All right.
You guys.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was gonna release them after item 8, but
That's fine.
it was starting to get a little late, and some of them have,
Yeah, absolutely.
high school gets started really early.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Sorry. There's like a STEAM question or two. She can go after that one.
So, do we have to, we need to decide tonight? We do, don't we?
Want to do it on June?
Or we can add it to the June 12th board meeting to discuss it. But we need the first resolution approved, or we have to schedule special meetings.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to have time for you to approve it. And I take it to the county auditor, county auditor certifies the millage rate, bring it back to you for the second resolution based on the millage rate, so. Again, we don't have to decide, we can always wait, but it would require a second meeting, special meeting. Unless we add it to the 12th, June 12th meeting. No, it's getting late already, it's 10:30.
If we added it to the 12th, first reading would be the next week.
Yeah.
Second reading would be July.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with sharing my preference now, but that's just me.
Well, share your preference now.
I like the idea of a substitute renewal continuing.
A substitute continuing? I think we should try for it.
I agree.
If we have to back down in May, then we have to back down in May, but I think we should try for it.
I'm fine with that.
That's what I think we should try.
Trying for what?
A
Rick
substitute
suggested?
continuing.
Yeah, what Rick
Yeah, I
suggested.
was just sitting here thinking,
I think we should try.
That's fine.
I move that we try that one.
Yeah, we don't need a motion if I have a consensus, that's what you
Oh, we
want.
don't? I think that's
what we
Yeah,
should
because
try.
you'll approve the resolution next board
I
meeting.
think it might be a fight, but I think that's what we should try to do.
And like I said, if we have to, do
It's
whatever,
gonna-
we'll do whatever.
It will require a lot of education
Yeah.
of our community, a
The
lot.
bottom line is it will never go up.
No.
No.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a known entity
You
into
can plan for it.
perpetuity.
Yep.
All right. We're done with that one.
There we go.
All right.
All right, we have the 403B plan reinstatement.
Do a motion and we talk about it and.
Okay, we need a motion to, what do we do?
I move to approve 8H, 403B plan reinstatement.
Second.
Yeah. So basically, this is, we have a 403 plan, which basically it's tax-free shelter annuities for our staff.
Okay.
Periodically, I had our attorney write a little blurb there that says why we're reinstating it, but every once in a while, they give you time to go back and fix anything that's wrong in it, and it applies back to the last 10 years. So, in talking to her, she said we need to get this done ASAP if something we want to do. She talked about the changes that were made to it, allowed Rolfs now, to basically some minor tweaks to it. Rolf deferrals, leaves employees disallowing 15 catch-up, but still allowing the 50 age catch-up. So it really costs, it's nothing, it doesn't cost the school district anything. It's an investment alternative for staff members to put their money in, either through voluntary or up on severance, they can put the money in there. So there's no cost to us.
Okay.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Ziny,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. Motion passes. We have discussion action regarding STEAM camp. Mrs. Perkins.
So we wanted to come back to the board and ask if we wanted to sponsor a few scholarships for students in need to attend STEAM camp. While you're thinking about that or talking, I also wanted to ask if you would be interested in entertaining the idea of the staff that are working the camp, if they'd allowed to have a reduced rate from 40 to 25 for their kids that would be attending. Just as a little extra burden, we don't pay them that much money to do it.
Say that again. Okay, what are
40
the?
if you're working the camp, like if you're just working, I don't know what the title would be, but if we could have them, instead of paying 40 for if they had kids attending, they'd pay 25. So those are the two things that I was bringing to the board.
And what was it last year? They paid for 4 per building.
Yeah, I forget how we did that.
Yeah, I don't remember. We gotta check and see.
I don't think we used them all last year. I don't think we used them all last year.
Yeah, I thought it was like 4 per, we do free reduced, it would be no cost to them.
Say, do you
4
have a
per
number?
building.
I mean, I get a number, I don't have a number off the top of my head. I just know that, I think we've had a camp, I wanna say less than 5 that have asked. It's not a ton that have asked, but I just didn't bring it back to talk about it this year, so.
And it's open to what grades again?
It's open to K through 8. And then the high school kids, the service counselors, like helpers, or stuff, like their service counselors. We have, I think the numbers are huge this year. Huge. We had to turn about 15 kids away. It's just huge. It keeps growing.
Okay. So would 8 be suffice?
We do that in May last year? Was it May
Yeah.
or June?
For some reason, the number 8 is sticking in my mind.
I think we've had less than 5 asked. So I think it would be enough.
And the price for this camp is $40 a kid?
You can be safe and say up to 10 or whatever, up to 8 or up to 12 or 8. What'd you find, Rick? Were the same numbers last year? We can.
The same as last year.
Well, he's looking at it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, just didn't come up as a search. I'm pretty sure I thought it was 4 per building.
Yeah, that'd be 16.
Here it is, yeah. Moved by Mr. Vincent, seconded by Ms. Engel to approve a camp fee of $25 per student with 4 students from each building to qualify for free reduced lunch to be paid from the general fund.
So that's 4 buildings.
And then we would want to add on that children of staffers get half price or,
Whatever, yeah, $25.
yeah, whatever I guess it's right there.
Yeah.
It wasn't right here though.
I would like it, yeah.
No, it just typed in, so.
Sorry, is my first wording okay? Or
No, it's fine. I just.
follow what Mr. Jones just read, 4 students in each building who are on special or who are on free reduced lunch.
Who are free reduced lunch
Yep.
to be paid from the general fund. Or who qualify for free reduced lunch, who be paid from the general fund.
semester.
I never wanted to type up there if people can't see a type. So that was approved, so that'd probably be good to have a motion for those two, so we.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler.
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
Mr. Zani.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Our discussion regarding staff appreciation. I think we've had some conversation, I think it was a couple of us actually. We had last week was teacher appreciation week, so obviously that was last week, but we talked about in the past, I know at the building level, the PTOs have done some things, and I know that the admins do some things for the staff, and the question had come up whether the board had wanted to do anything as far as staff appreciation out of the board fund, whether they wanted to do something at the end of the year, something at the beginning of the year, such as some token, or just want to think about that, or.
Yeah, I sent one of the emails. Yeah. My thought was in the past that the board was present when we're passing out the ice cream or whatever. And I think that it's very important that anybody who can attend, I understand that some people can, some board members can attend, but those that do, that we are seen by staff to let them know that we are recognizing them and appreciating them. So that was just my thought. And I know that we didn't get the opportunity this year, so I was wondering, does the board want to do something specific?
I would support that because I'm in agreement. I didn't realize until a staff member thanked me for the ice cream, and I was like, what ice cream? So I was like, and I've already talked about this too, but if it's not going to continue, then I definitely want to do, even if it did, even if we were to be a part again, I would still support that.
Or even maybe something formally, the Columbus School Board passed a resolution thanking teachers and staff for what they've done. So, I mean, not necessarily this year, but maybe that's something to look to in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we said I think that we need to make an effort to be visual.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, are we looking for something specific or just having a discussion that we all want to do something?
I think I just threw it out there to say, to have discussion. I don't know if we want to decide on
Does
something.
it fall under communication? Could the communication committee come up with a recommendation for us?
We could do that. Yeah. That's a two of us. We can totally do
That's a good idea.
We really don't have a board communication committee.
Oh,
It's a superintendent advisory committee.
Superintendent advisory.
So, I mean,
yes.
Can we do that?
Yeah, would we be able to do that?
I mean, you're back to, it's supposed to be superintendents, and
Right.
the board's not really supposed to be telling what committee.
Right.
But it's up to Bob, that's what he wants to approach, or the board can set a committee, it's up to, but again, if we get into following sunshine laws and all that other stuff, so.
Well, first of all, from the administrative point of view, we apologize that the board felt that they were left out. Obviously, that was not the intention. I believe we did the same thing that we did last year. But I certainly understand the request by the board. With the communication group would be a fine place to discuss coordinating some kind of effort, or maybe we do the ice cream, you do sprinkles and chocolate, or vice versa. Something where that we're both satisfied that we're working together, type of thing. So I have no problem bringing it up during the communication group.
Woo! 2019-2020. We need a motion to approve the 2019-2020 fifth grade camp student to attend Heartland Conference Center.
I will move that and remind myself to pay the amount for 2 girls.
And I will second that. Because my kid goes as a counselor.
Yeah. All right. Any more discussion? All right, Mr. Jones.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
Yes.
Mrs. Engel?
Yes. That passes. 10, we have A and B, a couple contracts.
Both special ed related. You can prove if you want, you can do them both
I'm
same
gonna say
time.
they're both special ed, right?
Yes.
Motion to approve 10AB.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Mrs. Spindler?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
Yes.
Mrs. Engel?
Yes. Those pass. We have treasurer's items A through C.
If I was like to do all 3 of these one time, you want to.
Motion to approve 11A through C.
Second.
First one's donations. We always appreciate those. Second one's then now certificate. We ask the board to approve that. It's actually for a contract for construction and aid for the building. It was originally made out to Robson Construction, so we had to get things changed. The contract was dated for April, and then we did a purchase order in May when we finally got it. So we asked the board to approve the then now certificate. 5-year forecast, I asked the board to approve it and authorize submission to High Department of Education. Really, the only thing's changed is I've updated for the actual property taxes, actual income tax collections for the year. And I've taken into account some of the school foundation flatlining, but none of the expenditures changed because we're not through the year yet. You know, we're ahead a little bit. So it's really just a slight update, nothing major changed since October. So I asked the board to approve all 3 of those. If you have any specific questions, I'll give them to you. If not,
Good.
Mr. Jones, call the roll.
Mrs. Spindler?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Zani?
Yes.
Mrs. Engel?
Yes. Passes. Some superintendent items.
I'll do it backwards. C is already done. B is already done, unless you have questions, because we looked at the graph a little earlier, so the enrollment's there. But the big one is set 2020 graduation ceremony, date and time. I don't want to bounce around, but we set that Friday, and it came to our knowledge that C-Tech is going to have their graduation that Friday. Next year, it seems that Memorial Day weekend is earlier in the month, and that's causing a little bit of, or it's just earlier than normal, I guess. So we looked around, we saw that Gahanna, Pickerington, Licking Heights, Newark were all graduating on that Saturday, whether it's morning, I don't know for sure, but we would like to make the recommendation to move it to May 23rd. You know, the preference would be to do it early so that if there are baseball, softball, track, other events, that they have the ability to get there. The other option is to go later and hope that those events are done. So, you know, it's a little tough. The only other per se option would be a Sunday.
I have a question.
Yes.
This graduation date was originally on Saturday, the 23rd at 10 a.m.
Yes.
And it was recommended to us to move it to Friday because there was a known potential something athletic that they wanted to be able to allow people to go to. And then the communication that I received in an email was that calendar was checked and there was no activity on Saturday. So is there or is there not an activity on Saturday that we are or are not trying to avoid?
What my understanding is baseball, softball, if they have an event because there's 2 teams, they will try to schedule around your graduation.
Okay.
But when you have track, it's more than just 2 teams. Track, from my understanding, Casey's the track expert, but there are various times during the day. I think there's a 10,
Yeah, there's
12.
3 sessions during the day. So go 9 a.m. graduation, then we'll put in for the second or third district of the day, which is clearly what a lot of area schools are doing, because that's what happen on Saturday. So they must be putting in based on wherever you're graduating for the opposite district of the day. So
Okay.
that should be put in.
I was thinking the email where we got, I think
Typically it falls on
that
the
it
regional.
said that there was no conflicts,
Yes.
and now there is again.
Usually it falls on the region, and next year Memorial falls, it's off.
Okay.
So that's where the confusion became.
Okay.
It's not normally the district track.
And it is district track next year?
It is district track.
Okay.
We'll have to put in for a division.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we'll have to put in for one of the, depending on time, one of the other divisions. That's when we'll have to put in for that.
We also looked at weeknights, but talking with the track coaches, they don't know whether or not they're a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday. But, you know, the thing that we have to do is people are beginning to plan a year in advance. So we at least have to give them the day. So if they're having people coming in, again, the time I think is earlier. You could go later in the evening, or you can go on a different day, of course. But the recommendation would be a Saturday morning. I can't 100% guarantee any day doesn't seem to have a conflict with someone. We're trying to avoid as many as we can. Like I said, Gahanna, Pickerington, Licking Heights, Newark are the 4 about our size around us that are going on that 23rd. Johnstown's going the 30th. I don't know if our seniors want to wait that long. They must have a different schedule. Westerville, Reynoldsburg, Worthington don't have it on their calendar, so I don't know what those days are.
Because, I mean, for me personally, this affects me in 2 ways. Both it's graduation and districts for the same kid. So it would directly affect.
What's been the...
But that's, you know, I'm not here to make those decisions. I'm just thinking about it.
And districts is the team.
Right.
So the team goes. So it's not like if somebody had qualified before.
Not everybody goes, though. I can only take 2 per event.
So what's been the hesitation about doing Sunday in the past, or has that just not been a day that...
It was in the past for several years, Sunday at 4.
Seems to be always a little bit more negativity up in the middle of the Memorial Day weekend.
It still is in the middle on a Saturday.
I think a lot of people like to do their parties on Sunday is what a lot of it is. People like to have their graduate on Saturday, and they like to have their parties on Sunday. I think is just the biggest issue. I would guess that's what a lot of it is.
I'm guessing I would say that the preference would probably be, although people are probably reserving rooms for Saturday night, would be, you know, like Casey's saying, to try to dodge one of the 9 o'clock or the 10 o'clocks and try to get into the 12 and 3. If you go later that night, it could, you know, your athletes at the 3 o'clock may be racing back if that's the one we're in. So, I mean, obviously, again, we got to graduate. We got to have the ceremony. We want to set a time. You could look like at 7 o'clock. I guess that would be better than pushing it further into Sunday or Monday that weekend. But there's no, I mean, once we set it, there's no guarantee that 3 o'clocks are going to get back depending on where they have to go.
Right.
If you do it in the morning and try to get in the 2nd and 3rd, at least it's done and your athletes don't have to rush back. It's just, and there's Sunday. I mean,
I don't.
I'm going to want some help on this.
Or a motion?
I think if you guys want a motion or just discuss and get a group consensus going and then make a motion, I think Kathy understands the necessity to get it set.
I absolutely understand. I was just questioning like why it was on a Saturday and it moved to a Friday. I know why it has to move back to Saturday, but one time there was something going on, and then I thought I had read in an email that the calendars were checked and there was nothing planned.
Yeah,
and that's where
that was
my
probably for
confusion
me.
came in.
Yeah. I'll take the blame for that. Yes, but I understand the track thing a little better now.
Okay.
Apologize.
That's all right. So yeah, I don't.
I mean, if you feel better, we can set the day and set the time later. As we get closer, I mean, that would be your call. At least people will know the 23rd. Right now, I don't know the specific times of Gahanna, Pickerington, Licking Heights, and Newark. Newark's kind of, I mean, I'm sorry, Licking Heights kind of locked into their time because they rented the Schottenstein, I think, for like $20,000 or something.
I mean, I think 8 is a little too early, but I think 9 is.
I think 9. Yeah, that's what I think too. I agree.
How about, I move we have graduation for the class of 2020 on Saturday, May 23rd at 9 a.m.
Second.
Yes.
Any more discussion?
I want to put a little asterisk.
What?
I want to put a little asterisk that we certainly, if it affects people, we'll bring it back to
We
you.
can bring it back.
Yes.
Yes. But that sounds like a
If we're
plan.
missing 25 kids, we can bring it back.
Okay.
Why do we vote on it?
Because it's on the calendar.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
What question?
Why is this something we vote on? Is it because it's on the calendar?
It's a board event.
Okay.
We can't control giving out the diploma, but the ceremony is the Board of Education.
Okay.
You can set any rules you want for your ceremony. The state doesn't care, so it may just be me, but when it refers to a board activity or board
That's
function,
fine.
I like your input.
This is my new person question, even though I'm almost not new.
I would have no problem making that decision, but if you guys don't agree, then you can say, well, I never had a say in it.
I actually just assumed it was because it was on the calendar and we approved the calendar. Cool, you can go.
But it is on the calendar, and we're going to correct it.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Zani.
Yes.
Passed. All right, we need a motion to go into executive session.
Wait, Teamsters.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, there's nobody here. So I mean,
We have a request to speak on non-agenda items.
11
Teamsters
o'clock.
Local 413.
Bueller.
Yeah.
really.
Sorry. Or request to speak on non-agenda items, Southwest Licking Education Association. Okay, now we need motion to go into, a motion to adjourn into executive session to consider the employment of public employee.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. We are in executive session at 10:47. session at 11:19. Call. Mr. Jones, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Here.
Mrs. Spindler,
Here.
Mr. Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Zani,
Here.
Mrs. Engel. Here, we have a quorum, we can continue.
All right, next is evaluation of the superintendent.
Okay.
All right. We ready?
Yep.
All right, the SWL Board of Education evaluated the treasurer. Mr. Jones continues to provide accurate and effective financial leadership. The board will continue to use his expertise in the future. In addition, the board evaluated the superintendent. We have found his competent leadership to exceed our expectations, and we look forward to his contributions to the district in his future role. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your service.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Somebody else have anything? Right. So item 16, adjournment. Do we have a motion?
Motion. So
Second.
moved.
Third. All right.
Mr. Jones.
You have a second, right? All right. Mrs. Spindler,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
Mr. Zani,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel.
Yes. We are adjourned at 11:20.
Because you know it's not official till you get